All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. So glad to be talking today. It is Wednesday, hump day. I always say that it's a good day for me. I don't know why. I just sort of feel like I'm making progress, moving through the week. Hope you're having a good day as well. Phone number here, love to talk to you, 240-242-5646. Had a couple of great shows. I think I was really happy with both of them. Monday with Carlos, the left-handed leftist, Carlos Childs, and then Tuesday with Arlen, and that's the regular schedule. Every now and then we have to tweak it a little bit, but that's what we normally see our week starting out, how we see it starting out. And I did get it wrong yesterday. I was listening. I was like, wow, I said Carlos was Tuesday and Arlen was Monday. And Arlen corrected me. And I was like, why are you correcting me, dude? I know when you're on Tuesday. Well, I did know that, but I sure didn't say that. So, hey, I'll make mistakes. Do my best. I tried my best. 240-242-5646. One more time. Would love to talk to you. I'll check out your chat. You comment, what have you. I'll try to get that on as well. Can't always do that because there are a lot of balls in the air that I'm trying to juggle when I do these programs. Now, I did not watch, right? Now, my title, my thumbnail for today's program, how should the big bold headline in yellow. And by the way, hat tip to Jimmy Dore. I look at a lot of different people's thumbnails, when I was trying to decide what was the right design for my thumbnail for Halitics. Because you try to be consistent, you try to have a brand, you try to look pretty much as, not exactly, you don't want every thumbnail should be a bit unique, but also you want consistency. And I looked at a lot of them and I always thought, well, Jimmy's really, really stand out. And I was trying to figure out why. And a big reason, he uses that bold yellow font. I don't think it's exactly the same. I try not to be, exactly the same. I want it to be somewhat different, somewhat unique. But the bold yellow font really, really stands out. Maybe he has black outline. I use the magenta, usually, not always. Usually magenta. Sometimes we use different font, but I try to keep it pretty consistent. So that is... there it is. That's what it looks like. And the question, how should Dems have responded to SotU State of the Union 26 by Trump last night? I'll be, first of all, cop to it. I didn't watch it. I didn't watch any of it. When I was preparing for today's program, maybe I listened to a clip or two, but that was it. So, if you say, hey, Hal, you got to watch those things if you're going to comment on them. That's fair. I'm not really going to comment. I'm not going to tell you what Trump said or what he should have said. I'm not going to say he didn't do a good job I'm not going to do that. My response, my show today, my program, my commentary is basically focusing on how the Dems should have responded, not whether Trump, did a nice job or what have you. I mean, I understand from the criticisms I saw, he didn't. It was, what I expected, based on what I've read. Long-winded, grandiose, self-congratulatory, very, very passing acquaintance to the extent there's any with the truth. So that's what you expect with Trump. And I hate to say it, I dare say that's kind of what you expect from politicians in general. That's what they give you. They give you what they think will redound to their benefit without any promises, without any commitment to direct action that will lead to a better world, that will lead to a better outcome for you. That is not, unless you're a lobbyist, right? Unless you're a billionaire, unless you're somebody who has let the politician put their hand in your pocket, then I'm sure you're going to hear plenty that you want to hear. And even if you don't hear it, specifically in a politician's speech to the public, you'll hear it behind closed doors. So I don't, talk is cheap. They can say whatever the hell they want. Trump can say whatever they want. Dems pretty much say what they think they can get away with and still claim to be on the side of the American people. Always platitudes, always descriptions rather than hard facts and specific commitments to make your life better. So, F them, right? I mean, I'm not, there's, that said, I thought Summer Lee, I listened to a good chunk of it. She gave the alternative There were two responses from the Democrats. There was one from Abigail Spanberger. I'll play a little bit of that, and then I'll play probably a little more from Summer Lee, which I thought was pretty good. That was the alternative response, and it's fascinating to me that Summer Lee, the Pittsburgh Democrat, did not speak on behalf of the Democratic Party. She spoke after Trump as a member of the Working Families Party, which I thought kind of interesting. Now, I don't give the Working Families Party nearly as much credit, if I give it any credit, as I give the Green Party, because they're not a true alternative to the Democrat Party. Generally, candidates who run as WFP candidates are also running as Democrats. Now, there may be a primary, and the WFP primary winner might be different. I think that could have happened in New York City last year. Zoran could have been the WFP candidate, even if he had lost the Democratic primary. And then I'd say, okay, yeah, vote for Zoran, obviously. I don't take the position you should never vote for Democrats. I take the position you shouldn't vote for bad Democrats, and most of them aren't very good. And when you have a better option, when you have a good option who's not a Democrat, then that's for whom you should vote. That's my position. Now, I would vote for, if I lived in Pittsburgh, I would vote for Summer Lee. Summer Lee was running against a really good Green candidate. I don't know what I would do. I'd have to look at the, I don't know, because I'm not faced with that. I don't live in Pittsburgh, but I would consider voting for Summer Lee over a Green candidate. It would depend on the issues. It would depend on how they're campaigning. But a major strike against Summer Lee, and I'd have to know the answer to this question. Will you vote for Hakeem Jeffries to be your leader? If she said yes, now she has in the past, right? I don't know whether she really raised her hand or what have you, but he was elected the Democratic leader by consensus. There was no challenge to him. So she, therefore, must have, at least in some way, indicated consent to the leadership of the Congress member who's made it clear Israel's the sixth borough. He's from New York. He's a Wall Street rep. That to me is an enormous red flag. That is flunking my litmus test now. I'd have to hear what Summer Lee has to say about it. She walks that back. Yeah, maybe I would certainly consider voting for her over a Green. But the biggest weakness, in my view, that even the best Democrat, the most progressive Democrat has, and I'd put Summer Lee in that category, I'd put Ro Khanna in that category, I'd put Rashida Tlaib in that category, I'd probably put Ilhan Omar in that category. Their biggest weakness is they vote for a centrist Dem, a corporate Dem, to be their leader. That's their big, and they don't call out the Democratic Party. So that's, for me, the biggest red flag. You can see this is the image that I used as the background to my thumbnail, which is but it has, the thumbnail itself has the big print. And the reason I use this, and the reason I'm showing it to you now, is because it kind of indicates how I think Democrats should have responded to Trump. You can barely make him out in this picture, right? This is the beginning of the speech, and I think I took this from ABC. I had CBS, but, CBS is CBS News, so I didn't want to keep. And by the way, that totally goes to credit, hat tip, whatever, 100% to the Golden Globes host. And I forget her name, but I thought she was really funny. I know there's some question about how truly dedicated she is to Palestine and whether she's even at all willing to break with Israel, but she did a real good job, certainly, at the Golden Globes. Let me look that up because I want to make sure I have her name right, but she was real good. She's done it before. I thought she was very funny. And she also, a lot of times, like Ricky Gervais, Nikki Glaser, by the way, was the host. She was very funny. I like hosts who are very caustic, right? Like Ricky Gervais was such a breath of fresh air where he really, he was pretty nasty, right? I mean, he really went after some of those Hollywood big shot stuffed shirts. He was, he didn't pull the punches. Nikki Glaser, a little gentler, which normally wouldn't be to my taste, but I liked it. I thought she was good. So, whatever. Maybe it was a kinder, gentler Golden Globes, and maybe that was what we need in our current world, which is just such a mean, vicious, nasty place. This image from the speech, yes, this is I think the Democrats were, ignore him. He's just a little, you pull back with your camera. And I understand, obviously, Trump's the most powerful person in the world by a huge amount, and he's causing untold damage. That's true. You got to respond to that. You can't let it ignore him. But what you can do is not go to his friggin' speech. Don't be in the room. Don't even give him that, quote, respect, unquote. I think that when you get in the mud with a pig, you become a pig. Not completely, obviously, but it's tough. It's tough to keep the muck off of you. And and pigs are clean animals. We don't want to be too nasty about pigs, but still in that pig pen, there's going to be some nasty stuff, right? And even if you're in the pig pen and you're trying to keep clean, but you're trying to wrestle that pig, you're going to get some nasty stuff on you. So my attitude is, you don't get in that pig. Don't get in the trough with a pig, what have you. And some would say, well, but Trump does it. He gets down, he calls people names and, whoever he's up against, he's mocking them and insulting them. And so what are you supposed to do? You got to fight fire with fire. Well, if you try to respond to Trump the way he acts to you, he wins. You're fighting in his arena. You're fighting a duel using his weapons. The way to respond to Trump is to present a viable alternative to Trump, to explain why what you want to do, what you will do, is better for the American people. Because if you get into a name calling, if you get down and dirty with Trump, then people are just going to, because one of the advantages, by the way, you have over Trump, if you're not Trump, and especially if you're not in Trump's party, one of the advantages you have over Trump is that people look at Trump and think he's pretty slimy, right? I mean, nobody really, they may say go Trump because he's going after the Democratic Party, and they may be like, yes, he owned you. But you don't look at Trump and say, oh, this is a fine, upstanding citizen. Nobody says that. So that's an advantage that you have over Trump if you keep far away from him. But if you start getting in the mud with Trump, then people are going to think you're just as dirty and disgusting and loathsome as he is. And they're going to be like, well, hey, he kicked your ass, so that's good. I'm for Trump. That's why I think you take that 3 steps away from Trump approach, and you address the damage he's done, and you provide a better alternative. That's not what a lot of Democrats chose to do. I think they made a big mistake. I think that was the wrong way to handle it. But the problem is Democrats really aren't, many of them are not in a position to describe a better world than Trump's world, because they're compromised too, because they're in the pockets of the billionaires, just like Trump himself is a billionaire, because they have for decades promoted policies that enrich the wealthy and empower the powerful. So their only way they can really fight Trump is to get in the mud with him and claim, well, I'm not as dirty as he is. I'm not as bad as he is. Doesn't really sound like a great strategy to me. Doesn't, and even if it wins on occasion, we're still stuck with the Joe Biden. We're still stuck if if Kamala had won with the Kamala. We're still stuck with genociders. We're still stuck with fossil fuel drillers. We're still stuck with a very, very grim future if we elect one of the mud wrestlers who got in the muck with Trump, because they are so compromised, they couldn't articulate or fight for a better world for you, for me, for our kids. From Maryland Matters. So I'm in Maryland. I'm going to talk about Maryland for a little bit. Maryland lawmakers snubbed Trump at contentious State of the Union address. Now, I think that's the right thing to do. I think you should snub him. That's what I'm saying. I don't think you should go. I don't think you should be there. That to me is the snub, right? You don't even give him the respect, which he certainly doesn't deserve, of being at this event. But I was a little surprised because I thought snub would mean you didn't attend, but it appears that they did, or at least a lot of the Dems did. Now, everybody's favorite lib, everybody's favorite grandstanding, self-proclaimed law professor, intellectual, Harvard guy, Jamie Raskin, he was there. He didn't snub Trump. What did he do? Dozens of accusers of sex offender Jeffrey Epstein were in attendance as guests of Democratic lawmakers. Raskin invited the brother and sister-in-law of Virginia Giuffre, a prominent accuser of Epstein who committed suicide last year. But she was much more connected, obviously, to Prince Andrew than to Trump, right? So yeah, but nobody, as far as I know, Giuffre never said she had any relations with Trump. She did say, and she stood by, and she got £1 million settlement or several £1 million settlement from Andrew. She did allege that Alan Dershowitz had molested her in some fashion. She later recanted that. No one knows quite why she did. She committed suicide. But I'm not sure how the direct connection between Giuffre and Trump. But I mean, I guess you put them in the audience. I'm not sure what you get out of that. I don't really see the advantages, the benefits. You're still centering Trump, right? He's still the Jupiter. He's still this giant center of the universe. When you do that, what I want, well, I mean, I've given up on Democrats largely, but what I would have hoped they would do, what I would have advised them to do is, again, don't center Trump. Sure, you can talk about how things are worse under his administration, but your focus should be on how you're going to improve the life of the American people. That's how you win, in my opinion. That's how we win, in my opinion. So I don't see how, by the way, this is not a snub by Raskin. This is centering Trump. 240-242-5646. And, Raskin would say, well, Trump is such a bad guy. That's why I impeached him after he was out of office. And my response is, how'd that work for you? Did you keep him from winning, Jamie? Or is he now the president with majorities in both houses? Maybe it would have been better. Do you think? I don't know. Could be wrong about this. Maybe, just maybe, it would have been better when you had Congress in 21 if you had spent your time trying to make life better for the American people by perhaps, I don't know, passing Medicare for all. You think? You think? Not a snub. Sarah Elfreth, Apex, Maryland darling. She didn't snub Trump. She was right there. She said respecting the three equal branches of government was the best way to counter Trump. So that's like this good government stuff, right? Hey, if we just build we just have like our tripartite system and we have checks and balances and we have, co-equal branches, that's going to stop Trump. And, there's something to that. If you have Democratic majorities in Congress, then sure, you pass laws that stop Trump. But still, the president will have tremendous power. I think you beat Trump is you present a popular vision that's better than his, that people find more appealing, more attractive, that they start gravitating towards Democrats. That's how you defeat him. That's not Sir Alfred's plan. And by the way, Jocelyn Pena, I'm sorry, folks. I'm struggling with that. I know her name. I know it full well. Jocelyn Pena Melnick, who was the Speaker of the Maryland House, was there as Alfred's guest. And I have a problem with that. I have a problem with Speaker Pena Melnick appearing as Alfred's guest. Alfred is one of the, AIPAC electeds, as are many Republicans. She got over $4 million through the last election cycle from AIPAC, one of the most, who received among the most amount of money from pro-Israel, from Zionist donors of anybody. I mean, it's just remarkable how much they poured into that election, AIPAC. And she's been there, she's been their ally. She's been there for them. So I have a big problem with Jocelyn Peña-Melnyk, who I think has done some good things as the House Speaker. So, again, tells you kind of who the Democrats are. Not a snub. No snubs there. No snubs. This is not a snub. Ladies, really? So there's Omar and Tlaib sitting next to each other, and they're kind of catcalling Trump. He's talking about Somali scammers in Minnesota. And they're catcalling him. And it's BS, right? I mean, there was some corruption, just like there is everywhere. Apparently, the amount was less in Minnesota than many other places. But because the scammers, at least a significant percentage of them were Somali, that gave Trump an opening to demonize the Somali community. So I get why you're upset, Congresswoman Omar. I get it. I truly do. But remember what I said, when you get in the mud, you kind of rubs off on you. Trump muck rubs off on you when you do that. You don't look great. I thought this was a fascinating headline, for their title, shall we say, for this video that was uploaded by Fox 5 Washington, D.C. And I guess what this is telling you is Fox, quote, news, unquote, is really leaning heavily on local affiliates. Because in the past, it's always been my observation that Fox local affiliates are not that partisan, right? That they seem to kind of call balls and strikes, or just not, just tell you what's happening. But look at how partisan, how absurd that headline is. Democratic lawmakers refuse to stand against illegal immigrants. Now, it's juxtaposed against Tlaib and Omar, but wherever you are in that video, which is over an hour long, because Trump's speech was over an hour long, wherever you are, you'll see that same headline. It's not just a subtitle to, or a caption for Omar and Tlaib, but still, because of that headline, because they're in the image, it sort of sends this message that middle America, I guess, that those who view with some reason immigrants as a factor in keeping their wages relatively low, this is a way that Fox can kind of paint Democrats. And again, it's not, they weren't singling out these two. I use this image because I feel like it doesn't redound to the benefit of the Democrats. It doesn't redound to the benefit of these two progressives that I respect. I think you're just better off don't even get in the room with this guy, right? Don't even go. Don't do it. That headline was given, that can be used against them now because they were there. And they refused to stand against illegal immigrants. What they refused to stand against is government goons, ICE thugs, masked stormtroopers in the streets of our cities. That's what Omar and Tlaib are upset about. But by being at that event, they can be sort of painted as anti-middle America. Trump said, now I thought this was a really interesting, again, I didn't watch the vid. I didn't watch it. By the way, if you want to comment, if you have a thought, either I'm getting it wrong or I'm getting it right, if you watched that State of the Union, please give me a call, 240-242-5646. Would love to hear your take and where, I'm missing the boat. Maybe you think the Democrats were absolutely right to show up. Maybe you like Trump. I don't know. Whatever your view is, if you were at that State of the Union, or I'm, at it virtually, watching it on TV and watching it on your computer, what have you, or you watched it after the fact, I'd like to know what you think. 240-242-5646. Just checking to see if I've got the comments. I'm not seeing them right now, but sometimes they're a little slow to come in. So we'll keep an eye on that as well. This is from, and I didn't out them, I didn't put the name of the poster, but this is from Hard Left, progressive, who I think is who I've known for many years, is a great ally in the fight for Medicare for all. And they have, in recent years, become less and less enchanted with the Democratic Party, and understandably so, because the Democratic Party has not been an ally in the fight for single-payer health care, not in the least. This poster notes, hey, as much as I can't stand Trump, as bad as Trump is on so many issues, and the poster is a little bit, is more, I'm not a huge, me, I've been critical of the whole DEI stuff. This poster is more supportive of DEI than I am. So they really hate Trump for that, as well, as do I. I mean, he's mean-spirited, he's a bully, he's cruel. But that identity politics stuff that I sometimes have problems with, they don't generally. And so that's one more reason to find Trump, from their perspective, loathsome. Now, I think Trump does play the identity politics, which I don't like, because he promotes many times this white-centric view of our country. And he does pit people against each other based on race, based on ethnicity, which I find horrible, awful, disgusting. I don't like it when it's done. Like, I didn't like it when Hillary Clinton did that either, right? Against Bernie. So, yeah. But my point is that the person who posts this is saying, hey, look, what we need is single-payer health care, and Trump's almost there. He almost got it, so close, but then there's that skull and crossbones there. He didn't get it. And the thing that is so important about this is Democrats are so bad on this issue, so un-pro-America when it comes to Medicare for all, that this is yet another opening for Trump, just as the tariffs were an opening for Trump, just like in 2016, when he was able to legitimately paint himself, claim the mantle of the pro-peace candidate versus Hillary Clinton. The Democrats are so bad, they give Trump these openings. And even though he's an authoritarian, and, I think, I say he's a fascist. I think he's reached that point where he's clearly a fascist, but even want to say, well, okay, he's not a fascist, he's a proto-fascist. On issues like endless war, at least at one point, Trump was less evil, maybe still is in some ways, because he doesn't promote endless war with Russia. But he is, the war on Iran is just so horrible. That's just, an area where obviously the Democrats have an opening, which they really aren't taking advantage of, and for good reason. But before we get, let me show this. This was also shared, and I thought this was a really good commentary about how bad the Democrats are and why, certainly in my view, we shouldn't support them. There's some we should support, the Summer Lees, yeah, the Omars, but as a party, no. And here's what Zenka says. Trump is threatening war with Iran, and Kamala Harris, she's the front runner for the Democratic nomination in 28, is silent. So is Gavin Newsom and Pete Buttigieg, Pritzker, Schumer, Jeffries, Shapiro, and Booker. Why? Because they're all in AIPAC's pocket. Israel wants war with Iran. So Zenka's nailing it right there. Are the Democrats really that much better than Trump? Even if they are, it's incumbent on us to demand better, to demand that they not be the party of war with Iran, that they not be the party of Israel, the Israeli pro-Israel party. And that's not, and that, they'd have to completely change their identity. this guy has really gotten better. I remember when he sort of started up on the internet, and I was listening to him. Now, he had been on Air America with Rachel Maddow. He had a show with her, I believe. I think he was the co-host with Rachel Maddow. Maybe I'm wrong. And it wasn't a big hit. I mean, it was, I guess, considered their flagship. I'm not sure whether, or no, he didn't do it with Maddow. He did it, Cedar did it. Maddow had her own show. Cedar did it with Janine Garofalo, I believe. And it wasn't a big hit, right? I mean, they were okay. He's smart, he's informed. But I don't believe that program was particularly successful on Air America, and certainly Air America wasn't. And he kind of moved to the center in a lot of ways. I think he did support Bernie, but he was against Force the Vote. He said he was against Force the Vote because he hates Jimmy Dore. That was his rationale. It's Jimmy Dore's baby. I can't support it. He was certainly very pro-Biden 2020, pro-Hillary in 2016. Cedar's gotten a lot better. I mean, there's just no question about it. This is a section of a video he uploaded before the State of the Union last night. I think it's well worth listening to. It's a bit long. I may interrupt it, but there's a lot in it that I think is worth listening to.
He just gives these illustrations to highlight the specific choice that Chuck Schumer.
So what Cedar is referring to was the decision to respond to Trump's State of the Union with an address by Virginia Governor Abigail Spanberger. And Cedar saying they chose a centrist, they chose a former CIA agent, and that clearly reflects where the Democrat Party is right now. And yeah. So let's play some more.
And we talked about this yesterday, how during the 2016 election and to some extent in the 2024 election, Democrats really tried to finesse their constituency in such a way that it involved Republican-ish people, and not working class Republicans, suburban Republicans, more white collar Republicans. And this has been
So no question, obviously, Liz Cheney is the poster child for that in 2024, where Kamala was far more comfortable campaigning with Liz Cheney than she was even with her vice presidential choice, Tim Walz, because she and Liz Cheney have similar views. They're similar pro-corporate, pro-military, right? Most lethal military of all time is what she called for. And Cedar saying this is who Democrats want to win with. They want to win with corporate Republican voters, well-to-do, affluent, country club Republicans, not working class, not blue-collar Republicans, but the Liz Cheneys of the world. He says also Hillary was the same way in 2016. I'm sure that's true. I guess there were some Lincoln Republicans who endorsed her. I don't really remember that race very well, so I can't really comment. I don't remember that aspect of it. But yeah, that's who your Democratic leadership, not every Democrat in Congress, that's who the leadership of the Democratic Party is. Very, very close to, very tight with, very, very comfortable with Republican elites.
Losing strategy for Democrats for an extended period of time, really. If you look at Congress, if you look at states, et cetera, that strategy has failed. We look at...
Now, he says it's failed, but you know what? It's failed in the sense that it lost to Trump twice. It failed in that both... And I think it's not really fair to say that about Al Gore, but John Kerry ran to the center in many ways in 24 against W. Bush. So I it fails often, but it doesn't always fail. You get winners too. Biden won embracing that strategy, for example, and Obama got reelected with a centrist strategy. He didn't get elected with a centrist strategy. He got elected with a progressive strategy in 2008, but he got reelected in 2012 with a centrist strategy. So it doesn't always fail. And it doesn't fail from the perspective of the Democratic elites, the Democratic donor class, and top Dems like the Clintons, like the Obamas. That strategy has been remarkably profitable for them. It's led to extraordinary wealth for them. So it's bad for the American people, even when, quote, it leads to Democratic presidents, Democratic majorities. It's still bad for the American public, but it doesn't always lose because people look at Mitt Romney and think that guy's even worse. That guy's even more of a patrician. That guy's even more on the side of the bankers than Obama is. But lots of times it does lose.
Donald Trump down in the polls, and a notion of like of wanting calm and whatnot is an element to it, but you're not addressing the underlying thing. This is about, in Stormer's words, sort of a restoration instead of a reconstruction. But we know restoration cannot happen.
Right. So what he's saying is that by choosing a Spanberger, right, someone who's associated very tightly with the military-industrial complex, somebody who is not a Medicare for all supporter, someone who is not willing to break with Israel, what Cedar is saying is that this is just sort of a business as usual Democrat, someone who's going to kind of steer a centrist course. And this is what presumably many Democrats maybe really believe is what the American public wants. But it's not, as he says, it's a restoration to Obama. It's a restoration to the Hillary Clinton rule, to her ideology. It's a restoration to neocon, to neoliberalism. But it's not a restoration to a Democratic Party that was indeed truly popular, that was able to command control of Congress for 30, 40 years, starting in the 1930s. That's not it's not a restoration to that Democratic Party at all. A restoration to that Democratic Party, first and foremost, would be calling for top marginal tax rates in the 80, 90% range. It would be calling for comprehensive jobs programs. It will be calling for housing, as we saw with the GI Bill and other bills. It will be calling for an expansion of critical safety net programs like Social Security, like Medicare, which was enacted in the 1960s. It would be calling for college education that is truly affordable, as we saw. Not quite close, though, in the mid-20th century. So the restoration that Cedar is talking about is a restoration to the bad recent Democratic Party, not to a much better Democratic Party that was your grandparents' great-grandparents' Democratic Party.
Biden was the restoration candidate, and he was thrown out.
And Kamala Harris ran on a semi-restoration style campaign, including talking about democracy on the ballot, which is exactly what you're saying, which is our system is under threat by Donald Trump. And don't you want to preserve the system? And you know what the voters said about the system?
System screwed us over.
They said we would prefer fascism to the system. That is how badly our so-called democracy in this country is broken, and how shut out people are from active participation in that democracy.
Right, so I'm going to stop it there, but that's a really, really powerful point. And this is, and I think it's powerful because it's one I've been making for umpteen years. Sure. You know what? People say, I don't care if there's armed goons in the street. If it's going to mean I'm going to get a little bit more in my take home, I'm going to accept that. That's a price I'm willing to have someone else pay so I can afford to stay in my house. And, Emma goes on to say, and a lot of them have problems with what Emma Vigeland says, but here I have no problem with what she says. Americans feel totally powerless when it comes to what the Democratic Party does. There was no primary, no meaningful primary. Kamala was anointed by the party leadership. And again, incredible turnoff. She goes on to talk about issues that really matter to the American people. We saw that with the Zenkis, right? That, Trump now threatening war. Democrats don't say boo about it. They're all silent. They're silent because they're bought and paid for. They're AIPAC stooges. And this is something that the American people hate. We don't want. We're against it. It cost Kamala Harris the White House, almost certainly. That's what the Democratic postmortem even concluded, one that you don't get to see. So why? So I don't get what do we get out of this party? Nothing. And they're more than content. They're delighted when Trump oversteps his bounds, right? Just do nothing. That's what's the Cajun guy, Carville said. Democrats just need to do nothing. Don't say anything. Just let Trump go too far, right? No matter how many people are killed, how much harm is done, just let him go too far. And at some point, there'll be a course correction. But it won't be a correction to towards a better place. It'll be a correction where we won't be steering straight into that iceberg. We'll be sort of skirting it, maybe. That's what the Democratic leadership wants. They will not fight for you. They have no interest in what's best for you. So the comment there by Zenkis was posted by a Facebook friend. I want to get into this a little bit because this is where we get to what we have to do. We have to abandon the Democratic Party writ large. It doesn't mean every Democrat. It doesn't mean you never vote for a Democrat. It means that your operating assumption that you will vote for a Democrat, you will vote for the Democrat who's running for president, you will vote for the Democrat who's running for governor in your state, who is running for Senate. That operating assumption has to go out the window. Only when the candidate speaks to the specific issues that impact on you and is committed to a material improvement in your life should you vote for the Democrat. And that is not what this commentator has to say. What they have to say in response to Zenkis' quote, which is, hey, Democrats don't say a word about Iran because they're, leading Democrats don't say a word about Iran, Schumer, Jeffries, Harris, etc., because they're part of the AIPAC orbit. The response here is, well, what choice do people have? You can either vote for Trump or not vote, stay on the couch, or vote for someone with no possible chance of winning. And as you know, my choice is, well, it's none of the above, but they would say the last one, no chance of winning. That's why we have to join together. We have to fight together. But the response, the question that commentator posed to the person who posted the Zenkis quote about how Democrats are useless, worthless because they won't say anything about Iran. She said, well, what do you want them to do? They have, what else can they do? They have no choice. They have to, or you have no choice. You have to vote Democratic because otherwise it's Trump or it's somebody who can't win. And their response, the response of the poster was, well, here's what I want. I want Democrats to formulate a winning platform. And that's not what I particularly want. I want them to formulate a platform that's good for poor, struggling, and working Americans. I want them to formulate a platform that promotes peace. I think that is a winning platform, but sometimes the winning platform is a bad platform. It's a harmful platform. And that, and I won't vote for that. And I made the point, uniting in support of green candidates is how we win. We're not losing when we together promote Greens. We're on the road to winning. And then the response I got was, well, what are you voting for when you vote Green? Which is like, basically, you're going to lose. It seems like such an obvious answer to that. I'm voting for peace. Medicare for all, a living wage. That's what I'm voting. I mean, clearly, the policies, they're better policies. They'll lead to material improvement in the lives of poor, struggling, and working class Americans. That's what I'm voting for. I'm voting for peace, for the environment. What else would I vote for? That's exactly what I'm going to vote for. It just, people can't, I don't know why that's a hard one for folks. A lot of times you hear, well, you're just voting to teach the Democratic Party a lesson. I'm not voting to teach them a lesson. They don't learn their lessons. That's what the Rational National David Dole said. Hey, they lost with Hillary and they tripled down with Kamala and they lost again. So voting green doesn't teach them a lesson. And his conclusion is therefore don't vote green because it's not going to change the Democratic Party. Well, if your goal is to change the Democratic Party, you got to, I don't know what, it sure as hell voting for their neo-lib, neo-con, corrupt candidates ain't going to change them. Voting against them apparently isn't going to change them. So don't give up that goal. Maybe you embrace the goal of making things better, voting for somebody who, if they win, will make life better. Do you want to play, I promised you I would, clip from Spanberger's response to Trump. Well, also, we're going to conclude with what I thought was actually pretty darn good, Summer Lee's response. And Spanberger, unlike the Dems that Zenkish rightly throws shade on, does mention Iran. You'll have to decide if you think it's good enough what she had to say.
After working in law enforcement, I continued my career of service as a CIA
I
officer.
want to say this. This is very early on in her speech. I didn't start at the very beginning, but it's pretty early on. And she's giving her CV, her after working in law enforcement or after working for the CIA. I'm like, who the hell gives a crap? I don't care. It's so not relevant. In fact, it's a turnoff. This braggadocio is clearly how it comes across. Now, if you said, I've dedicated my career to trying to make life a little bit better for the American people, then I don't think that's such a turnoff. Then I think people might say, yeah, well, that's what we want. But somebody who's worked in the CIA, hell, George H.W. Bush was the CIA director. I don't think anyone looks back at him and says, oh, what a great president George H.W. Bush was. I don't think we look at John Kerry was actually a true American hero in Vietnam. He saved his troops on that swift boat of his. And yet he got smeared for that, attacked for that. What Americans want is somebody who's going to fight for them against the billionaire class. And what you're describing, Governor Spanberger, is not that. That's not what your record shows you to be. A fighter for working class and middle class Americans. Your record does not demonstrate that is who you are. So maybe don't talk about it.
After working in law enforcement, I continued my career of service as a CIA officer, working undercover to protect the United States and our allies from global threats, terrorism, nuclear weapons, and the aggression of adversarial nations around the globe.
See,
but as the
maybe you could look at like 9/11 and say that statement would be resonant, right? If you gave that speech about how you're working to protect us from global threats, it might, really reach people. Now, I would make the argument that we were hit on 9/11 because we are the global threat. We are the in many ways, the great Satan in terms of the actions that our country takes. But I would get it. We were hit. We were hurt. We felt really bad. We were licking our wounds. And now someone comes and says, hey, I'm fighting to keep us all safe. I think that would have some resonance. Right now, you have a generation. 9/11 is what? 20. It's amazing. It's over 24 years since it happened. It's amazing to me. You have any voter under 30 may barely remember it. And if they're under 28, they don't remember it. Their history is America the bully. Their history is America arming Israel. Their history is America provoking war with Russia. Their history, more recent, is America devastating the Middle East. A regime change in Iraq, regime change in Libya that led to terrible outcomes. So talking about protecting America doesn't really, I don't think, resonate with most Americans who are looking for peace. We're looking for an end to empire and militarism.
The President spoke of his perceived successes tonight. He continues to cede economic power and technological strength to Russia.
This is the wrong message. That most Americans are fed up, sick of, tired of endless war with Russia. And in a way, it's a mistake too, because you're bringing to people's minds. I understand there's millions, tens of millions, maybe 100 million Democrats who still believe, against all evidence, that Trump was conspiring with Putin. Just didn't happen. Just didn't happen. That's not why Trump won in 2016. He didn't conspire with Putin, and Putin didn't tilt the election in Trump's favor. Now, if anyone tilted the election in 2016 in Trump's favor, it probably was Israel. And even then, I don't think that's what happened. But this kind of, Russia baiting, again, not effective, not what you want to do if you want to bring American people to your side. But it is what you want to do if you want to keep the dollars flowing from weapons manufacturers, from AIPAC. Then this is what you say, because they'll be comfortable with you. They'll certainly keep funding Republicans, of course, but they'll fund you too.
To China, bow down to a Russian dictator, and make plans for war with Iran.
All right, so she does mention Iran. I give her credit. She says he's making plans for war with Iran. But what she doesn't do, and I'm going to play that again, and I'll play it all the way through, she doesn't in any way condemn those plans. She doesn't say this is wrong. We shouldn't be doing this. This isn't going to be good for the American people. You have an opportunity to explain how bad an idea this is, how American adventurism has been so harmful, not just to the countries that we've toppled, destroyed, but even to us. She has that opportunity. She completely forsakes it.
China, bow down to a Russian dictator and make plans for war with Iran. Here's the truth. Over the last year, through Doge, mass firings, and the appointment of deeply unserious people to our nation's most serious positions, our president has endangered the long and storied history of the United States of America being a force for good.
But I'll stop it. Well, I actually did stop it there. That was the end. So, just to get back to that, yeah. He is fomenting war. He's running up a war with Iran, which is a terrible, terrible thing. She doesn't in any way really condemn that. She says, here's the truth. She doesn't say this war would be a disaster. This war is the absolute worst thing we could be doing. Would just continue our spiral down morally. Instead, she says, we need to return to this time when we are this force for good. Well, what time is that? I pointed out that's not in people's memory. Even if you want to go back to my memory goes back to where America was a force for terrible things in Chile with Pinochet, in Vietnam, Pol Pot, Cambodia, right? We created that genocide by bombing Cambodia, destabilizing that country. That's just going back that far. So I don't know what time period she's talking about. Grenada, the Sandinistas, Nicaragua. I mean, what is she talking about? Our policies have been incredibly bad, incredibly harmful, and harmed American people. So, again, a complete misreading of the room in every way. What she could be doing, should be doing, is pointing out how Trump, claimed accurately when he first, criticized American foreign policy, was very, dubious about the American projecting force, that it has not been good for us. He said that. That's why, and I can understand why you might have voted for that. But look at what he's doing. He's completely sold out to Israel, to Netanyahu. He is looking to push us into a war with Iran. He has not ratcheted down tensions with China. Those are what you want to point out, not claim, oh, well, we need to go back to a different time when American imperialism was a force for good. No, there's no such time like that. Summer Lee does a real good job with this. We're kind of at the end of the hour. I got a little bit of a late start this morning, so I do apologize for that. Let me play Summer Lee, her response, and we'll end with it. We'll end with Summer Lee. So here we go.
Evening.
And again,
Congresswoman Summer.
Very interesting there. I'll start it up again, but just wanted to point out again, look, working people's response, working family party's response. So they posted this, but I got to believe the Democratic Party doesn't love that. I got to believe they don't love it. I mean, she's a Democrat, but they asked Spanberger, right, to respond, not Summer Lee. And also, I think Alex Padilla from California responded in Spanish. I'm not going to play that clip for obvious reason. I don't speak Spanish.
And I'm honored to deliver the Working Families Party response to the President's State of the Union.
Well, let me just, I was a little soft. I had a little trouble hearing that. Maybe you didn't, but we'll play it. We'll start again. But she, like I said, maybe this, I was thinking, well, maybe the background there, the framing says working people's response, because working families party posted this. But Summer Lee makes very, very clear at the very beginning that she is, in fact, speaking as a member of the Working Families Party, not as a Democrat.
I'm Congresswoman Summer Lee, and I'm honored to deliver the Working Families Party response to the President's State of the Union. The Working Families Party is the political party for working people, not the bosses, not the big dollars. I'm proud to be a part of a movement.
And so she's saying, remember, she is a Democrat. She caucuses with a Democrat, but she is a Democrat. She said they're the party of working people, not the bosses. She's telling you that the Democratic Party is the party of bosses. That is an incredibly good message. That is the right message. That's the message the American people want to hear. The problem is she also caucuses with the Democrats. She's trying to finesse it, play that line. Hey, I got one foot in the Democrat Party, I got one foot out. That would be good enough for me to vote for her, but I understand the skepticism.
And by the people. So let's start with a simple truth. What we are witnessing from our government is authoritarianism. Any response that doesn't acknowledge that truth is a disservice to Americans who deserve and need honesty right now. I listened to Donald Trump's speech tonight. While Trump and his friends profit off his presidency, he's gaslighting us. He wants to convince working families that we're better off under his regime. But we know that—
Stopping it right there. I think this is good stuff. I like that she's going after Trump. Now, again, I think it would have been better. I like the way she's doing it. My theory for the best response is where you promote your agenda. You don't talk about the other guy. But she's doing a pretty good job with it. Gaslighting is for sure true. It's accurate what she's saying. Trump's an authoritarian. I love the fact that she separated herself from the Democratic Party. So that's all really, really good stuff. One other point. When Abigail Spanberger delivered her reply to Trump, she told you all about herself. I was in law enforcement. I was in the CIA. I was committed to protecting America. And people are like, you weren't really protecting us. You were actually making things really unsafe around the world. Some really didn't get into that. Oh, this is what I did, and I did that, and I did. No. Trump's an authoritarian, and that's really bad, and this is what we need to do instead. That is the right way to respond.
Truth. Our country is in crisis. For millions of Americans, affordability is out of reach. Trump has driven up the unemployment rate, cutting thousands of federal jobs across the country. Everything he does is making Americans less safe at home and abroad. He's bringing us to the brink of wars in the Middle East and South America. And at home, ICE agents are hunting down human beings and cities are under siege. The FBI is raiding election offices in Georgia. Students are being disappeared for protesting tyranny and genocide in Palestine.
I give her so much credit for using the genocide term. Outstanding. Summerly, thank you. It's a little partisan. Again, for my taste, I would have preferred her to concentrate a little bit more on what Democrats should be doing, and what they will do their agenda. But she's got a little bit of trouble. If she said, "Hey, we're going to pass Medicare for all," nobody believe her. Everyone knows the Democratic Party ain't going to do that. This is some red meat for the base. I get it. It's accurate. So I really can't be hard on her for telling the truth about where we are as a nation. She is accurately describing America right now.
The environmental protections we earned after a generation of advocacy are being stripped away. Educators are facing attacks on public and higher education because diversity and truth threaten corporate power. Workers are facing union busting and retaliation. And the Republican-led Congress, it's abdicated its post as a co-equal branch and yielded itself to the oligarchs in the White House. Trump bragged about his tariffs, but they were never about creating jobs. They were a tool for Trump to bully countries or companies into paying fealty to him personally, and about making working people pay the price for his tax cuts for billionaires.
So I support tariffs generally, broadly. I think they're the right response to offshoring. I think they're the right response to cheap overseas labor. I think they're the right response to countries that don't enforce environmental laws. They're the right response to cheap diesel fuel that container ships use to transport goods from overseas at a very, very low cost per unit. So I support tariffs. But the way she framed that, I think, is pretty darn fair. She's saying, hey, it's really not for Trump. It's about leveraging whatever power he has to extort money from other countries. I don't think that's inaccurate. And I do think there's something to be said for what her point, which is, hey, yeah, okay, maybe she doesn't say this, but I would say it. Yeah, maybe there's some net benefit to American labor, or there is a net benefit to American labor, to working people, to manufacturing labor from the tariffs. But that benefit is offset in large degree by the fact that Trump, rather than using the revenues from tariffs to ease the costs of living that working people experience, he's using it to cut taxes on the billionaires. She's right. That's true. And it's a really, really, really good point, and one that she was right to make. So even though I don't love the dig exactly at tariffs, she's correct that the tariffs are being used as a stalking horse for tax cuts for the billionaires.
The courts have blocked his illegal actions, but for too many small businesses and consumers, the damage is done. He played up his tax cuts, but forgot to mention that it's $1 trillion giveaway to the wealthiest and well-connected. He talked a big game about banning stock trading, but wants to exempt himself so he can keep on cashing in. The state of the union is dire. We can't afford to believe Trump's lies, and we have to pay attention to his actions. This is not a normal time, and our response to it can't be politics as usual. Trump's speech wasn't a list of accomplishments. It was more like an obituary for the country working people built and a celebration for the billionaires who want to strip it for parts.
All right, so very good stuff there. I'm going to play a little more later on where Summer Lee goes even further in a direction that I want her to go. So I thought that was a very good response. And she definitely, made it about the class struggle. She made it about the billionaires versus working people. That's what Democrats need to do. That's what Democrats will do, would do, should do if they want to win. Since they don't do that, remember, she was speaking on behalf of the Working Families Party. She wasn't doing that as a Democrat. Abigail Spanberger spoke as a Democrat, kind of, waxing eloquent about the wonderful times we had, in the past 20 years as things were actually getting worse and worse for America. Let me just not have that. So the fact that Summer Lee had to give that speech, a powerful speech, as a Working Families Party member, I think tells you an awful lot about why the Democrat Party is not the answer for working people, why we need to look outside the Democrat Party, why we should be consistently always looking for alternatives to Democrat Party candidates, unless they speak the truth in a way comparable to what Summer Lee does. All right, let's see. I want to get to a little more. Let me start at 11:10. This is where I think she really starts to nail it.
On one side are millions of working people demanding bold action, lower costs, higher wages, Medicare for all. On the other side are corporate donors and consultants who are terrified of upsetting the very interests that rigged this economy in the first place. That tension shows up in watered down bills and speeches that sound bold, but
she's talking about the Democrat Party. She's saying there's a tension between working people, what we working people want, what they need, and the donor class, the influencers, the whisperers in the ear of the Democratic leadership. And she's saying, and the result is watered down bills, ineffective legislators, delays, inefficiencies.
Govern small. You can't promise relief while protecting corporations driving up the prices. You can't stand with labor while taking checks from the union-busting CEOs. And you cannot defeat MAGA while keeping billionaires comfortable. In other words, you can't serve two masters. That's why the Working Families Party exists, to help us bring bolder people into government who better reflect the vision of working people. Look at Congresswoman Delia Ramirez, a daughter of Guatemalan immigrants in Chicago who expanded Medicaid, built affordable housing, and protected people from eviction as a state legislator before bringing that same fight to Congress. Or Congresswoman Latifah Simon, who worked for more than 30 years helping survivors of violence and trafficking. Now she's here in Congress to push for affordable housing and transit that connects people and that helps them get to work, and for an economy that doesn't treat Black and brown communities as disposable. Look at New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani, who took on Andrew Cuomo and his corporate backers and won. He led a movement of renters, young people, and working families who had been told their voices did not matter. He proved that when you show up, when you speak clearly about how to meet people's basic needs, the people respond. And now look at New Jersey's newest Democratic nominee, Ana Lilia Mejia. She started her race at 5%. She was outspent 10.
So she's going to go on to Mejia and how she still managed to win. Now, of course, part of that victory you got to give to AIPAC, and only 28% of the voters in the New Jersey primary chose her. But still, yes, it was a win. It was a win for a true progressive. It was a win for somebody who's anti-Israel, and we should celebrate that. So you see the two visions of the party. It wasn't, of course, exactly what I would have said, but I thought Summer Lee did a very, very powerful job. And she did what I've been saying AOC has to do, Bernie has to do, Ro Khanna has to do, and they haven't been doing it. and that is take on directly centrist Dems, corporate Dems. Say they are not allies of working people. They are enemies of working people. We'll see if there's any movement, beyond just a couple, 3, 5 representatives to follow that model that Summerlee just provided. If they do, then yeah, maybe there's still hope, a little bit, still hope for this party. But unless the Democrat in the race that you're voting in is going to embrace that Summerlee style, that Summerlee method, presenting the Democratic elites, the Democratic establishment as part and parcel of the real problems we face, unless you're unless you're voting in a race where you have a Democrat who's doing just that, I think you got to look outside the party. That'll do it for me for today. Thank you so much for being part of Halitics. I'll be back tomorrow. Have a great afternoon.